Hi, and welcome back to the Anatomy of Object-Oriented Synergy. In our last video, we talked about properties and methods. In this video, we'll take a deeper look at methods by introducing you to constructors and destructors. Constructors and destructors are object-oriented, or OO, concepts, and there are no equivalents in the non-object world. In a previous video, you saw an object being created and instantiated. Now, we'll see a little bit of what goes on automatically behind the curtains when an object is created and destroyed. First, we'll look at constructors. A constructor is a method that is called automatically by the runtime when an object is created or instantiated or constructed. Constructors typically have initialization code, that is, code necessary when an object gets created, to do things like open files or initialize variables. A constructor has the same name as the class in which it's defined. A class can have many constructors, as long as their signatures, or argument lists, are different. A constructor never has a return type. A constructor only allows access modifiers, public, protected, private, internal, and protected internal, and the static modifier. Even if you don't define any constructors, the compiler will add one that has no arguments. In other words, no parameters passed to it. But as soon as a single constructor is defined in the code, the default constructor no longer exists. Now we'll look at destructors. Like constructors, a destructor has the same name as the class in which it's defined, except a destructor name is always preceded by a tilde character. Destructors are virtual methods that are typically used for class-specific cleanup operations when an object is going to be destroyed. Also like constructors, a destructor never has a return type, and if no destructor is defined, a default empty destructor exists. Unlike constructors, however, there can only be one destructor, and it doesn't take any arguments or modifiers. Next, we'll walk through an example of calling a constructor by signature in our mainline program. The first object based in our widget class is instantiated. It calls the constructor that takes no arguments. Then, the second object will call the constructor that takes an alpha argument. A destructor, on the other hand, can't be called directly in code. When an object goes out of scope or garbage collection occurs, the runtime calls the destructor automatically. One important thing to keep in mind about destructors is that their behavior differs between Synergy.net and traditional Synergy. In traditional Synergy, when the reference count of an object goes to 0, it's marked for destruction, and that's when the destructor method is called. In Synergy.net, destructors are non-deterministic, which means the .net garbage collector determines when they are called. There's no guarantee as to when they'll execute. They may even execute after a stop. In .net, the destructor is run on a different thread, and this may cause issues when performing file I/O in the destructor. Additionally, destructors that perform file I/O will implicitly cause multithreading to occur. Also, be sure to use error trapping in a destructor. If an untrapped error occurs, a destructor can cause the runtime to enter an infinite loop. So now you know how to create constructors and destructors, and to understand when they're called. The topic gets more complicated when inheritance is involved, but we'll save that for another time. The basic information we presented today should get you ready to start constructing and destructing. Objects, that is. Thanks for checking out this video. Stay tuned to learn more about Synergy syntax for object-oriented programming.